Rajaguru Mailsamy is the co-founder and CEO of Innerboon Technologies, where he leads generative AI innovation, offering Gen AI as a service and building AI applications for enterprises. With extensive experience at TCS, Roder and Schwartz, and Accenture's strategy consulting practice, Rajaguru shares insights on navigating AI's hype cycle, executing effective and quick POCs, aligning business stakeholders, and leveraging new age techniques like rapid prototyping and accelerator bots.
Raja, tell us, you must have seen something happen in the market to decide that you want to take the plunge at this time. So what did you actually see change?
We've been in the field for the last 10 years. First 5 years, we focused primarily on mobility platform, mobility solution. And then over the last 5 years, we are more into services business. And the first product is almost got into an autopilot mode. And therefore, we could focus more on the services part. We started with video analytics, data analytics, and data engineering. However, over the last 2 years, given the traction GenAI had, given the excitement we felt with the GenAI, we completely revamped our team towards offering generative AI services. We saw great potential in what GenAI can do across all functions and cutting through all the areas across enterprises in improving efficiency and also improving places where the past automation could not bring in change. For example, in the past, the automation were mostly about automating the repetitive process procedures. But going forward with generative AI, we see massive opportunity in automating the cognitive tasks, which is possible, in fact, actually only with GenAI in this era. So that's what made us very excited about this technology. And once we went in, we saw the magic in front of our eyes. What ChatGPT models and the OpenAI and Gemini models could offer, could bring to the table, and the same also could be achieved with other open source LLMs. So when we built those use cases and saw the magic happening, we really got excited and we thought this is the way to go. So that's why the transition happened. So we initially fell for the magic of GenAI, then we realized the potential it can bring to the market. Then we thought, okay, this is the place to focus.
Understood. So would you see it's more inside out based on you seeing the potential versus seeing something change in the market dynamics itself?
Yeah, it's more on the inside out where we saw the potential, Shri, because it is the technology in itself is in its nascent stage. It's not gone to a mature level in terms of regulations, policies, in terms of how secure it will be. But unanimously, I've been talking to a lot of business leaders over the last 1 year. Unanimously, what I hear from them is everybody wants to go GenAI. But almost everybody is uncertain about what is the value it will bring, what is the ROI, how secure it is, and what places, what functions, what areas it will impact. There is a lot of uncertainty. But to answer your question, yes, we went. It's not that there is a lot of demand that pulled us. Rather, we see the potential that the demand will peak soon in another 2-3 quarters, I would say.
Understood. And what are you practically seeing in the market once you go out with these, solutions that you're going to pitch to clients? How's the reception to it today?
I'll tell you how the market transitioned. We started transitioning more towards generative AI core focused company about 2023 beginning. And at that time, when you used to talk to business leaders, there was an aura around it. Okay, GenAI, we want to adopt, we want to know more. So when we went for calls with business leaders, we identified the gap. So this is what motivated us to focus more towards it. When we talk to business leaders, they felt they want to go to GenAI, but there is a gap in which for large enterprises or even for the medium enterprises, if they want to try something on GenAI, they have to put together talent. They have to get their top management, bought into the idea. And there is a lot of bottleneck that delays them to try the test and learn approach in generative AI. So if you want to try something quick, if you want to adopt the test and learn approach, because of bureaucracies and the inherent nature of how medium and large businesses work, it takes longer to form teams and try and test things work. So this is where we thought we could pitch in and add value, where we can form teams quick, we can deliver POCs quick, and that's where we entered. So when we talked to business leaders at that juncture into 2023 beginning, we felt that the maturity of understanding about the Gen AI of those business leaders were not substantial enough to make decisions, because they were not sure how effective the solution would be, as I mentioned before, how the ROI would be. So we felt all this uncertainties, large amount of vagueness and uncertainty as the period transition. So for example, the calls I'm going over the last 2 months have been a lot sharper, even from the client's end, even from our customers' end or the business leaders' end, where they are very clear, or rather, I wouldn't call it very clear, but at least they have a fair idea as to where it can add value, and they come up with sharper questions and they come up with sharper requirements. Okay, I want this specific function to be automated, and they even come with even specific requirements where they say, okay, I want these documents to be in the a part of knowledge corpus within the LLM, and that should be used for different applications. So when you see the transition from last year to this year, I see the requirements and the conversations I have with my business leaders around me getting sharper and sharper, and I see it getting more and more only in the coming quarters.
Got it. So it looks like the awareness, the understanding has improved. What about the readiness? What would you say in terms of what size of businesses you work with, whether it's mid-market, enterprise? How ready are they to actually deploy solutions quickly? What are the challenges in actually getting there?
Excellent question, Sri. So generally, for the generative AI, when I talk about generative AI solution, it involves multiple components. It is not just, okay, fine-tune LLM, put a bunch of documents, it will work. No, definitely no. Because that's what most of the people think. Like, oh, it's just ChatGPT, you just type question, you get an answer. And similarly, you upload your documents on top of the OpenAI model, or rather the Gemini model, it will work. But actually, it is not the case. There is a lot of work that has to be done in the background to make sure the LLM understands the data. So LLM is also like a child. You teach it the right way, it will give you the right output. So, and therefore, the data engineering component is massive. Rather, in the whole chain, the chain of this application, right from the data ingestion until you explore using applications, the data engineering is a big piece. About 40% of the efforts would roughly go into that bucket. So when I say generative AI application, it is not just about only LLM and uploading docs. So you make sure the data is consumable for the LLM. And for example, you want to make it access specific. Some part of, for example, the finance part of the enterprise should have specific access to some data, which the HR function should not have, because some of them are sensitive or some of them are specific only to finance. And same goes with all the other functions as well. A supply chain team should not have access to the finance data. So similarly, we have multiple other requirements coming in when we start building the application. So it is not like you put the documents and you get output. And therefore, so to keep the long story short, so any generative AI application development involves 30 to 40% of data engineering. Then about 30 to 40% of like generative AI model tuning. It could be either fine tuning your LLM itself, or we could have a RAG pipeline which will pump in the data into the LLM ecosystem. And on the third bucket would be the software development part. You need the dashboards built, you need the APIs built to integrate with the database, etc. And then set up the whole AIOps itself. So that's the fourth bit. Whatever cloud infrastructure you use, you set up the whole AIOps. So the whole thing is more streamlined. So that is where it is.
Right. And when we caught up in the past, you spoke a lot about speed and prototyping.
Correct.
How has that helped your clients? And does that speed and prototyping still involve all of these stages, or are you in a way skipping some of these? You talked about data engineering, you talked about the ops, you talked about security, right, etc. Right. So does prototyping mean, hey, we're ignoring some of those for now and doing something else? Tell us more.
Sure. So when it comes to prototyping, Sri, so we consciously pick the LLMs which needs less efforts to show some quick wins for the end clients, and we consciously pick the documents that wouldn't need too much of engineering again. For example, a lot of image-based documents or a lot of documents which has unstructured data in conjunction with structured data. So such documents we try to take it for the later stage once the POC is proved. POC is more of creating or generating interest for the end client as to how to envision a solution, how it will look like. So what we consciously do is to pick the whole flow, the data flow, which are quick wins, which can be deciphered or rather parsed quite easily and then fed into the LLM. And in most cases, we use OpenAI and Gemini models where we just interface with them, or rather, largely from our side, we use OpenAI models to directly connect with the data using RAG pipeline and shows them output. And once the client likes it, then we take it to a larger scale. At that time, the decision making comes whether we have to bring it on premises using other open source LLMs, or should we continue with the OpenAI models itself. So that's where the decision making happens. So for the POC, most cases we use OpenAI. We bring in data, create a wow factor. I mean, if that the solution is what they envision to be. So once that is validated, then at that point we decide on a larger scale as to how to integrate with multiple data sources, what connectors we have to build for the data sources, what parsers we need, and what is the cloud infrastructure, how to manage the GPUs, etc. All comes later.
Understood. Is there any risk of good ideas, good initiatives getting junked based on like a POC not turning out the way it is, or not creating as much wow given you're picking like only part of the problem?
Yeah, so it has two dimensions to it for the POC to be successful. One is the functional side. So on the functional side, it's and on the technical side, that's the second part. So it need to be a very close collaboration between both the sides. So for players like us, we are a proper technology company. So suppose if you ask me to develop a POC for a supply chain function, for example, we need the functional side to collaboratively work with us to envision what problem they want to solve. So that's where the real success is. So they orchestrate the product side of it as to what problem we are trying to solve. And is it really the top pain point in the enterprise? And they bring in that envisioning of the product, and we come in from the technology point of view for that problem and for that kind of data, what kind of solution can we stitch together? So we have about a bunch of bots, about 250 plus bots that enable stitching together things much quickly. So it's to answer your question again. So it's more on the collaboration that makes it more successful. So whether or not your idea is great, if you have the right partner working together, there is highly likelihood of exploring the full potential of that idea. So it's always the case that some idea could bring in a lot of value add to your bottom line or the top line. Some of them may be mediocre, like depending on how important the pain point is for that organization. But the more critical piece here is having a good team on both the functional side, preferably from the enterprise side, and the technology side, players like us who have done in the past. So that combination makes a magic. So rather than the idea itself, if you have a wrong team, they can ruin a great idea. If you have a good team, they can really even make a mediocre idea fly. And
absolutely, that makes a lot of sense. Curious from a enterprise perspective, what are you seeing in the market in terms of, are these POCs happening to validate, hey, are we working with the right partner, or are they actually also necessary for the companies to actually fetch more budget to make the full-fledged solution happen? So are POCs just being used to internally showcase and say, hey, here's what we're exploring, we will now need more budget? Or do you think the budgets are there now for going after full-blown solutions?
Well, I think when enterprises, so from my point of view, based on my discussions with the enterprise business leaders, I mean, all of them have the specific pockets of budgets which they can use for innovation or new technologies. So they have to be wary on where they're spending the money. And therefore, so most of the motivation of POC comes from validating how that ROI would be, how much of impact it is going to create for the enterprise. See, most of the enterprises, or rather all of the enterprises, they work specifically for the top 2-3 pain points they have. So there are two aspects to it. So one is like the pain point they want to address, and second is that there is an innovation angle which the business leaders have to look into from future perspective. So how to take the organization innovative in the next 5 years. So they have a separate strategic initiatives around it. So these are the two angles in which these POCs are born, in my opinion. So in either of these dimensions, before they go full-fledged into a solution, see, any business leader, they have to take the buy-in of the person above him and in order to get a buy-in, I mean, given the bureaucratic nature of large and even medium enterprises, they need to prove something. They need to show something. So seeing is believing, especially in technologies like Gen AI, because there is a lot of aura around Gen AI, but there are not many people who are doing actively things in Gen AI. We are one of a few companies who have been actively developing generative AI products for our end clients which are in production. So most, when you look at the market, Gen AI is overtly abused. So therefore, for the management to take decisions, they need to see something. And in order to see something, they have to, POC is the right way to go. But if you want to develop a POC in generative AI, there are a lot of bottlenecks there are a lot of roadblocks for the business leaders. Like one, getting the talent quick and fast. And for larger enterprises, it takes about 10 to 12 weeks even to form teams. But companies like us, we can deliver POCs within 10 weeks. We can form team in 1 week. So that's one big roadblock. And second is to, suppose if the POC doesn't go well, what do you do with the team? These are large enterprises. You can't severe, or let go of people at will. So generally, there is a lot of severance that they have to take care of to convince the HR. What will they do with the team in case if it doesn't scale? So etc. So these are the common problems which enterprises face. And this is where the companies like us can go and pitch it to help them form team in 1 week, get the POC done in 10 weeks. If you want to scale, we can scale. Otherwise, you want to take it in-house, we can do all the transition to take you in-house. But to answer your question, so all the POCs are born with a thirst to try something before they invest a larger budget.
Understood. And can you give us some examples of where clients decided to kill an idea? And what sort of makes them go that direction? Just, I think, as a learning for people, okay, here's what to avoid, or here's, the types of clients or types of projects that you don't want to touch because it may not actually lead to success.
Okay. So far, fortunately, we have not had any POCs in which they did not see the value and then it was killed. There are reasons why it is. I'll shortly come to that. On the other hand, not that all the POCs we developed went into production and scale for multiple other reasons. So, for example, the budget constraints at that point of time, or rather, their changes in priorities. They had different priorities to focus on other functions. But most of the or rather all of the POCs, had a good business case to scale further, but for different reasons at the client, some of them were not scaled. And so if we take a step back, how to get to this? So that's where that magic collaboration happens. So it's if it is done for short-term perspective, short-term gains perspective, whether it is on the business side, enterprise side, or for a vendor like us, if we think only short-term goals and try to convince the client and get into the POC without understanding the intrinsic value that the POC can give, or rather the product can give, it is highly likely that it can go into failure, because already there is a lot of vagueness around how the solution would come out. Only when you implement the POC you would know. And therefore, having a solid understanding of the business case in the beginning as to how important that pain point is. If you solve the pain point, what is the kind of savings they'll get? So that understanding is very critical, is what we see. If we ruin that phase, then the whole POC will go for a toss, even if you have a magic team working on it. So to answer the question, we have not had any failures because it didn't make sense to scale. Rather, we had some POCs stopped from scaling for the time being until their different priorities or until the other priorities are closed.
I think the repeat message I'm hearing is that any initiative you pick needs to be in that top 3 priorities for the enterprise. If it's somewhere else in their pecking order, it's likely that that's going to get skipped.
Absolutely, absolutely.
Yeah, I think every services company talks about this concept of accelerators, and you also brought up this idea of 250 plus bots that you built. Are these going to play a role in a specific part of the project? Is it, something that brings to life a use case, or are these accelerators or bots even for something like on the data engineering side? How do we get things done faster?
Okay, so before I get to this bots, I will tell you the history behind why we started it. So when we started campaigning, talking to business leaders for Gen AI, it was very difficult to convince the client, or rather make them envision how the solution would look like. So that's where this bots were born. The main intent, or rather the only intent in preparing those bots are nothing but a bunch of POCs we built on a very lighter, leaner model in which they can see the idea, they can see how the solution will look like, and when they like it, we build on top of it. So the whole intention, or rather majorly the intention behind this bots initially was to show to client how the solution may look like. Suppose if you are HR, how will the generative AI be able to help? A very lean model. For example, you can filter resumes, you can do automated interviews, or if you are on the financial or banking domain, how we can enable this generative AI model help do your capital management, or help do your financial modeling, etc. So to come to these solutions, we develop, to create inspiration to the clients, we develop these small use cases. And in the process of making these use cases, what happened is a lot of functionalities were built in the backend, inadvertently, I would say. Because our intention was to show something to the client in the front as to how the solution may look like. But what happened was, along with that, implicitly all these bots were built, for example, automatically converting voice to text transcripts, using the right services for it, and then bringing it into the LLM, creating a pipeline where the voice becomes text and goes into LLM. This was built for one of the POCs. And for another of the POCs, how to read the structured data, how to set the context for the structured data, that pipeline was built. So similarly, for all the front-end use cases, a lot of back-end mechanisms were built, which ended up being individual components that facilitates accelerated development of the generative AI solutions. So when you ask me, okay, show me this bot, most or many of the bots will be mostly in the background, which can serve a purpose. You call the API, it'll, for example, for a knowledge graph, you want to convert the data into a knowledge graph. We build it for a specific use case. In our dashboard, the specific use case uses that knowledge graph. But eventually it became a component that can be used anywhere. We made it so easy to deploy, rather we can be stitched together as a part of any solution. So what it does is, these bots enable us to build faster. It is not kind of a thing where you take it out of license, kind of off the shelf, you take it and then use it out of license. Rather, if somebody comes to us with a service, if other company takes 100 days to build it, 100K to build it, we can do it in 60K in 60 days probably, and give the same output, thanks to all the backend capability we've built over the last 1 year. So these assets serve that way.
Got it. So it's more like microservices, which are modules of their own that you can sort of bring together to create a right solution.
Absolutely.
Now that you've seen the benefit of taking that approach, do you actively invest in more, hey, we're going to create more of these sort of services, or does it only come in the context of, hey, new client needed something, we don't have it, why don't we build this in a modular way?
Yeah, so it's a good question, Sri. I mean, this is one big learning we've had over the years, even as an entrepreneur or as a solution provider. It is almost always important to go with problem first approach. I mean, we strongly believe in the fact that don't build a solution and hunt for a problem. You have a problem, you build a solution for it. And when you build a solution, try to build as generically as possible so that it can be plugged anywhere. So to answer your question, it is not that we anticipate some problem can happen, try to keep the bots ready so that it can make it happen faster. Rather, you see the problem, okay, that is a POC to be built. And for that purpose, you try to use the existing bots or rather use the newer bots. And in that process, that problem, if it demands some bots to be built, and especially to make it generic, we would go with establishing that as a separate and standalone bot. So in short, it is all problem driven rather than solution driven.
I'm gonna just contrast something. So you have a POC phase where you try to show a rapid win to the client. Does that set unrealistic expectations of what comes next for them? Because later you do need to do that 40% effort in data engineering. Maybe InfoSec takes more while, and before you take a solution to production, it's going to be a more elongated journey for the client. Does it happen that people are surprised that, hey, if you did this so quickly, then why should that take long?
Absolutely. It's a very good question. The main reason behind this is it is fairly easy to get to a very initial view of the solution. It's really quick to get to show something quickly to the end client without having an optimal framework in the backend. It's like 90% of the efforts can be done probably in 30-40% of the time. But to get that fine-tuning of the last 10% will take a lot of time. So, and that's where I would rather request the business leaders to be cautious as to what kind of team they engage. If they're too short-term focused and they want to get a quick win and get the project or get the business, if they show something quick, it is very easy for them to fall for, okay, the solution has come up, okay, it'll work. But that actually it's not the case, and therefore it is very important for them to consciously pick the right vendor who sets the right expectation, because POCs can be quickly built, but to fine-tune them, generally it will take longer, and there will be some inherent risks which has to be seen in the beginning itself, so that they can keep those platforms ready when they build the POC in the beginning. So it is not the case that you see the POC and just you go and scale. If this is done in 10 weeks, the whole solution should be done in another 10 weeks. That's not the case. So to show something initially is always easier, but it takes a lot of effort to fine-tune it and make it to that 100%. So, and therefore, it's very important to consciously choose the right vendor who takes care of everything in the beginning. Preferably somebody who's done it in the past will be able to understand and anticipate what kind of issues may come and then take care of them even while building the POCs.
Awesome. Thanks, Raja. We're getting towards the end of the episode. Couple of quick questions unrelated to GenAI. What's your favorite quote or line from a book or a movie that you sort of carry with you?
That's a good one. I've got many, but I can quote a couple of them. So one from Pursuit of Happiness. If there's somebody say that you can't do something, don't believe them. Even if it's me, you go. If you have a dream, you should protect it. I mean, that's Will Smith's dialogue. I love it. That's from Chris Gardner. And the second, and one of my more favorite dialogues is from Rocky movie, the latest one, I guess, where he says, it doesn't matter how hard you hit. It is more about how hard you get hit and keep moving forward. It is more about how much you can take and keep moving forward. So that these are very inspirational quotes, because I'm someone who believes in hard work. I mean, at the same time, of course, you need to be smart. And with hard work, you also will learn to figure out how to work smartly. So, and therefore, in business, in the entrepreneurial journey, it is invariably everyone will fail. It's inevitable. And rather you will fail more than how much you'll succeed. So it is more about keeping moving forward despite the failures. And the faster you fail, better it is for you. Fail fast and go. Don't go in a wrong direction for a longer time. Figure out if it is wrong sooner. Come back and then push yourself in the right direction.
Awesome. What do you look forward to most, or what's most exciting for you right now when you look at the business itself?
What I anticipate things to turn around positively in 2 quarters from now, especially from what I hear from my close connects, some influential folks around in the market, a lot of regulations, policies, and things have been happening to make generative AI more business applicable or more reliable, and to remove the vagueness that business leaders have. So in another 2 quarters time, we are going to see a rapid growth in the infusion of Gen AI, and especially from what we have seen in the implementation, it has massive influence across functions. I would compare it with the .com in the 2 decades back as to the kind of impact that it created, Gen AI could create. That's mainly because the way it can automate the cognitive tasks and the way it impacts every function in an enterprise. It is not specific to one. So I really am excited to see how things will shape up in Gen AI, and we're very positive it will come out good. And given that we are early adopters in it, we adopted a year back, and then we've built a strong team. And although the projects now are all mostly in POCs, I see that more of them are moving towards implementation, from experimentation to implementation. So we see more of it coming, and I'm very excited because we are early adopter and we're pushing well to cater to the organizations. So where we get the maximum excitement would be when we actually solve business problems and we see the value added to the enterprise. The business or the money part is always a byproduct. So the more problems you solve, the more enterprise you solve, our intrinsic business will naturally go. You don't have to focus on it. So that's what we're more excited about. We want to make changes in the world, or rather enterprises use Gen AI and create value for them.
Awesome. Sounds great. Last question for the day. What inputs would you share for entrepreneurs starting now in this space?
So what I would say is when somebody starts, it's not necessary that they need to hold all the technological knowledge. It is the materials are vast. You can go anywhere. Across the domain, internet domain, you get a lot of materials to train yourself on. So when you embark on this Gen AI, what I would strongly focus is don't go solution first approach. Don't try to develop a solution and hunt for a problem. It's okay to sit and analyze and spend a lot of time in identifying the right problem statement. It might look very generic, my statement, but really that's the way to go. You have to keep sitting and observing. You need to talk. Suppose if you have the domain expertise, well and good. You can go and look back, identify what are larger pain points you had, and don't worry too much don't be hell-bent that you want to solve only with Gen AI. There are multiple other substitutes which you could go with. So that's where most people, where I see fail is where first they go with the solution. I develop a solution, I look for the problem. And second, they're hell-bent, they want to solve only with the technology they picked up. There could be much better alternatives, but they get biased with one technology. So what I advise for young or entrepreneurs who want to start fresh in generative AI, identify a problem statement. And if you don't have the domain expertise, identify somebody who is in the domain, or identify many folks in the domain and talk to them and understand where exactly the pain points are. And the gap is people who know domain will not know the tech, and people who know the tech will not know the domain. So if you are a tech guy, find the domain guy. If you are the domain guy, find the right tech guy. So that's the marriage. When it happens, brings out the magic.
Awesome. Thank you so much for your time and insights today, and glad to have you on the show.